I never thought of myself as a billionaire. Truth is, I still see myself as the son of a carpenter who built his fortune one brick at a time. My father started with a rundown duplex in Oakland. I remember the smell of sawdust on his clothes, the way his hands were always rough but steady. He worked hard, and he passed that steady hand to me. If you've ever felt betrayal inside your own family, you'll understand where this is going. Like this video, drop a comment with your name and state for a shout out in Chapter 2, and subscribe so you don't miss how this story unfolds. When he died, the company, our family's empire, fell to me. Not because I was the eldest, but because I had been at his side since I was a boy. My brothers, Michael and Raymond, were sharper with their tongues than their patience. They liked shortcuts, attention, fast wins. Father never trusted that. He trusted me. For years, we ran the business together. I thought blood was enough to keep us united. But money changes the way family looks at each other. The first sign came at a board meeting. Nothing dramatic, just questions. Michael asked if I was too cautious. Raymond said maybe it was time for new blood. They laughed when they said it, but the look in their eyes told a different story. A few weeks later, my mother asked me to dinner. Over soup, her voice cracked as she said, "Edward, the boys feel you're holding them back. Maybe it's time to let them lead." That stung more than I let on. My own mother, swayed by their whispers. I didn't argue. I folded my napkin, kissed her cheek, and drove home. But staring out at the city skyline, at towers carrying our name, I knew the truth. The crown I'd carried all these years wasn't mine to keep. And my brothers were already circling. The day it happened started like any other. I walked into that boardroom with my notes, ready to talk about projects and numbers. Instead, I walked into an ambush. Michael and Raymond had been busy. They'd spent weeks whispering into ears, convincing cousins and shareholders that I was stuck in the past. Even my mother had been swayed. When a motion to remove me as chairman was read aloud, it didn't feel like a debate. It felt rehearsed. I looked around the table. Men and women I had mentored, people who once sought my advice, now stared down at their papers. Nobody met my eye. The vote was quick. Just like that, the seat I had held for decades was gone. The press had a field day. Headlines called a family rift a power struggle. Reporters camped outside my home, shouting questions about corruption, about whether I'd lost control. My children saw it all. My daughter, angry, asked why I let it happen. "Dad, you built this. How could they just take it from you?" My son was quieter. He just asked, "Are we going to be okay?" I told him the truth. A title can be taken. A name can't. But inside, I'll admit, it burned. Not because I lost power. Because my own blood had been the ones to swing the blade. That night, I poured a glass of scotch and sat in my study, staring out at the skyline. Those towers, they still carried our name, my father's name. My brothers thought they'd humiliated me. They thought they'd shut me out. But I'll tell you this, time has a way of setting things straight. And patience has always been my sharpest weapon. Losing that title was supposed to break me. Truth is, it freed me. For the first time in decades, I woke up without a calendar full of board meetings or shareholders breathing down my neck. I started walking the city again, really walking it. Past old construction sites, through neighborhoods where my father once dreamed of building homes. People still stopped me on the street. They didn't ask about Michael or Raymond. They shook my hand, told me their families had roofs because of projects I pushed through. That reminded me of something my brothers never understood. Respect isn't tied to a chair in a boardroom. So I started making calls. Quietly. Old partners, loyal clients, men and women who'd built their own fortunes alongside me. I didn't ask for pity. I asked if they still trusted me. Most did. Enough did. Within months, I formed a new company, Empire West Holdings. Smaller, leaner, but mine. And this time, there would be no brothers at the table. Meanwhile, I kept one eye on Michael and Raymond. They were reckless. Hungry to prove they could do what I did, but faster, flashier. They cut deals with questionable financiers. They funneled money offshore. They bragged about record growth, but the numbers didn't add up. I didn't rush to expose them. I just watched, collected documents, talked to the right people. Greed has a way of leaving fingerprints, and my brothers were leaving them everywhere. At night, I sat in my study, files spread out before me, glass of scotch in hand. I wasn't plotting revenge in the way people imagine. No rage, no shouting, no fists on the table. Just patience. Calm, steady patience. I knew the day would come when their own ambition would trip them. And when it did, I would be ready. The invitation came in the mail, thick cardstock, the family crest embossed in gold. A special board session. I knew what it meant. My brothers wanted to show me how high they'd climbed without me. I went anyway. The conference hall was buzzing when I walked in. Reporters lined the sidewalk outside, cameras waiting for a story. Inside, Michael and Raymond sat at the head of the table, smug as kings. They clicked through slides about record profits, international deals, new visions for the company. The room clapped politely, though I noticed eyes darting, brows furrowing. Numbers can impress, but they can also lie. When the floor opened, I stood. I carried a plain folder, nothing flashy. I placed it on the table and slid copies across to each board member. Offshore accounts, inflated contracts, payments routed through shell companies. Every page was stamped with dates, signatures, and dollar amounts my brothers thought no one would ever trace. The room went quiet. This, I said, my voice steady, isn't leadership. It's theft from our shareholders, from this company, from our father's name. I didn't need to say more. Faces around the table turned cold. The same people who voted me out now glared at Michael and Raymond. My brothers fumbled, sputtered excuses, Raymond raising his voice, Michael turning red. But it didn't matter. The evidence spoke louder than they ever could. By evening, the headlines weren't about their vision. They were about fraud, greed, scandal. The empire they thought they'd stolen from me was crumbling under their own weight. I left the building without a word. No bloating, no anger, just the quiet satisfaction of a man who'd waited for the truth to speak. And it had spoken louder than I ever could. The scandal didn't fade, it spread. Regulators moved in, auditors dug through every file, and within months my brother's empire began to rot from the inside out. The same newspapers that once printed their smiling faces now carried headlines about fraud and betrayal. I didn't need to say a word. I just kept building. Empire West Holdings grew steady and strong. Partners who were tired of my brother's recklessness came knocking on my door. Investors trusted me, not because I promised them fireworks, but because I gave them something rarer: consistency. At home, things were quieter. My children saw the truth for themselves. The father they once worried was too soft had outlasted betrayal without raising his voice. My mother never spoke much about it after the scandal, but I noticed she stopped defending my brothers. Her silence was its own admission. I walk the city now with a kind of peace I never had when I was chairman. When I pass the towers with our family name, I don't feel bitterness anymore. They're monuments to greed now. But when I stand before the projects my new firm is raising, schools, homes, hospitals, I feel something different. Legacy. My brothers thought power was something you seized, something you ripped from another man's hands. They never understood that real power is quiet. It's the respect you earn when you hold steady, even while being betrayed. In the end, they destroyed themselves. And me? I walked away lighter, freer, still building, still steady. That's the truth about revenge. You don't always need to strike. Sometimes, you just need to step aside and let time and truth do the work for you. If you followed this story all the way, thank you. These stories aren't about wealth or status. They're about dignity, patience, and outlasting betrayal. Like this, if it resonated, share it with someone who needs the reminder, and subscribe for more tales of quiet justice and strength.